Ba'asrei derav. Okay, shkayach. I know where this is going. Ba'asrei derav. You have to start with Paiskim b'divrei Rav, right? So let me start with something about this week's parsha. That's not really in this week's parsha. It's not in the Sichos in this week's parsha. It's in Parshas Matis, but it sheds a little light to what we're doing here. This in tomorrow's Chitas. In tomorrow's Chitas, there is a klutz kasha, but if you go weiter, it's much deeper than a klutz kasha. It's a negel halacha l'maisa about ein chot and kavul talmud makom harav. Always, if you have a little misnagish blood, you always think about how by for bringing people would step over Rabbanim's heads and varfs. Like, where did this come from? There's a halacha. There's a machlek. The Gemara in Basa speaks about the concept of ein chot and kavul the talmud makom harav. 1 second. Chelik Chav Gimel, page 186. This is Chav Gimel. So, the Rebbe has a phenomenal sikha where the Rebbe speaks about this Gemara about Sarseu v'Darsheu. They came tomorrow on Pesach Sheni. They came with Moshe v'Lefnei Aaron. They addressed the question, and Nachman Tamei L'Nefesh Adam. And the question is, Moshe sitting there. What are you addressing the question to Aaron? So there's two answers in the Gemara and Bava Basra. Either Sarseu v'Darsheu, and they asked the question first to Aaron, then they asked to Moshe, or Bebeis HaMedrash Hoya Yoshvin. And Beis HaMedrash, the question is addressed open. It's negaya to what before you start a shir today. So the Rebbe has a phenomenal sikha. It's actually Parshas Pinchas, where it talks about B'nai Slavchad. And the Rebbe says the two shittas in the Gemara. It's funny that Rashi has the shaila 3 places: B'nai Slavchad, by the Mekoshes Eitzim, and by Pesach Sheni. And by every place, Rashi gives a different answer. Stimmt doch nicht. So what's negaya to us is like this. The Rebbe says like this: Beis HaMedrash, which is a koilul, is an ort wo we learn Torah zusammen. Nicht an ort wo Eden versammeln sich zu hören Torah halacha von a chacham. It's not a place where you hear speeches or piskei dinim. It's the chavrei koilul learn together. Das heißt, Hagamas in Beis HaMedrash is voran a Rav, a Rosh Yeshiva, Kayetze Beza. Und es ist einen dort Talmidim. Und zwischen den Talmidim Gufa seinen dort Chilukim b'malasam. Afal Bikain is the Indian from Beis HaMedrash. As alle Yeshiva Beis HaMedrash seien sich mishtatif in the limud. It's not a question where one person says the halacha and everybody else just kaddish. You're involved to develop the halacha. Alle seien sich mishtatif. Heron di shaila, shakel of a tire year near. Based on this concept, the Gemara says by Beis HaMedrash Yoshim, the Rebbe for emphasis why it was able to be in the Pesach Sheni, in tomorrow's Chitas, Lefnei Moshe Lefnei Aaron, because it wasn't addressed as a shaila. Let's discuss it. Der Fun is euch moving. A shaila is was very gefragt in Beis HaMedrash, seinen beäufen scheiner wie die shaila was man fragt beim Motten Yeshivas Bezdin, or the Dayan, or the Bayarav. B'shas mefrekt a shaila by a bezdin, dayin, a rav. A filu when der bei stehen Talmidim is moving as the shaila vet gefrekt dafke beim bezdin. Masha inken a shaila was vet gefrekt Beis HaMedrash is he gewendet nicht zum Rosh Bezdin, not to the Rosh Yeshiva Kiyetze Beza, not to alle Yeshua Beis HaMedrash. They seien alle ma'ayin ba shaila und jeder von sie kann sagen daite shozer. And this is the Hagdama for today's discussion. It's not a shaila. I'm not discussing a halacha. I'm just going to be ma'or things, and it's Beis HaMedrash Hoya. All right. I mean, everybody, obviously, you're learning the sugya of ribis. Ribis is a very, very complicated sugya. I'm not totally involved in ribis, but I'm involved in Chaysh and Mishpat and other parts. And there's a lot of similarities in some of the halachas I'm learning with the halachas that you're learning. And the very, very, am I supposed to speak in English? Can Yiddish now? Okay, fine. You already started in English. Oh, sorry. All right. So It's very. I don't know if people discussed it. The concept that the Hilchos Ribos falls in the middle of Yeridea, not like the Rambam where it's in by Gzela and the Kinyonim where it's in the middle of Yeridea. It's not only something that's murder to talk about. Actually, the tour, the Prisha, in the beginning of the tour, when he's in the Hilchos Ribos, he's murder. He says over there, Midi Dabri boy. I'm going to talk a little about the background of Ribos. So the Prisha says, what's the Midi Dabri boy? I think that was the Lashon. She says, because it really doesn't belong here. Ribos, right before Ribos is Chukas, right before Ribos is all the Pasakum, Bishulakum, all those, Yain Esach is all before, right after that is Chukas Hakum, and smack right in the middle, sandwich in the middle is Ribos. And the question is, why does it belong here? Number one. Number two, if you look at the Hilchos Ribos, you'll find that the shtel of how the Mechaber discusses Hilchos Ribos, the Alter Rebbe and the Mechaber is different than the Tur. In the Tur, he starts off with the positive, mitzvah of l'nachri sashich. When there's a mitzvah to take Ribos, or however, v'chulu. And then he says, what's mitarnish done? The Alter Rebbe and the Mechaber goes backwards. First, the no. And at the end, you go with he speaks about the l'nachri sashich. I did see a Chassam Sofer. I made a copy because it's a phenomenal verse. The Chassam Sofer says like this. Huh? Huh?
Maybe it's just the Alter Rebbe that starts at the nose.
The Mechaber also doesn't the Mechaber also? The Torah starts with the yes. I don't think the Mechaber. I think the Torah also is at the end. Is that right? The Torah doesn't speak about the beginning. Doesn't speak about the guy. Oh, I'm sorry. So what then? The Alter Rebbe, the question is correct. And it's stimtish with the Chassidish Mahalach. Usually you go Isha, and then you go for the no. So the L'nachri Sashich. So the Chassam Sofer says that the Rambam is meinit for one of the mitzvahs says the mitzvah of say L'nachri Sashich. So he says like this: V'tzarich iyun, and the fact that you're taking a ribis from Nachri as a payment is not the simple taich of L'nachri Sashich. If you read the simple, it's a limud in the word tashich. L'nachri Tashich means you should actually give him ribis. And the Chassam Sofer says, Tzarich iyun, teinach la'al v'yse b'ribis. I understand to give him a loan and charge him ribis. I understand why it's a mitzvah to say likach menu ribis. Lo la'al v'yse b'chino. Achha parsha mayri miloiva v'noisen ribis l'malva. But the simple taich in the pasuk is where you're giving the ribis. You give imkain ma mitzvah sasei litin ribis l'nachri. Why is it a mitzvah sasei? Why does the Rambam consider this also a mitzvah sasei to pay? If you're taking a bank loan, you're taking a loan from a bank loan, whatever, take a private person loan from a guy, it's a mitzvah sasei to give him ribis. Why can't you save that money? And for the Chassam Sofer, this is in Parshas Kisei v'yesh leimar. The mitzvah litin ribis, the mitzvah is to give a guy ribis. Kedei shelayasa chesed bal va'aseh liYisrael. Nebuch, there's a yid that needs a ribis, not dafka is a Nebuch, because the alvar is even for a yid asher. But somebody needs money and he's desperate. He's willing to pay the ribis. It's kuk tachuis that the guy is a nice guy. He's doing something kind. So kedei that the halva that the guy gives should be considered chesed le'umim chatas, that he's in it only for money. He's not into the kindness of giving people loans. Therefore, there's a mitzvah saseh that you should make sure when you get something from a guy, pay him extra. So on the sign that his chesed should not work out as a chesed for the halva. It's a mitzvah saseh, so it should be chesed le'umim chatas. This is what the Chassam Sofer says. Anyway, so in some places it starts with the positive, and some places it starts in the negative. What's negay in Choshen Mishpat is in Choshen Mishpat we have a similar din in Siman Tes. In Siman Tes there's a din in Shulchan Aruch about shoichad. There's a lot of similarities between ribis and shoichad. Shoichad obviously is for dayanim. So the Shulchan Aruch, another deal. In Shulchan Aruch and Siman Tes And Choshen Mishpat says, Ma'oid tzarich lizar, not to take sheikhad, not to give sheikhad, not to sheikh. Both one is l'fnei iver, one is taking the sheikhad. And the lashon is ma'oid. What's very strange is the smeh right over there says, Avashtek ma'oid, says the smeh, because any concept where a person could be making money, a person, the Chaptzich Nish, in Shulchan Aruch, it says that in Hilchos Yom Kippur, it comes to Ne'ilah. What she daven in the Ne'ilah? In the Ne'ilah, what's Yichidish, Benefesh, lofty things. And in the Ne'ilah, you say, Ata Neisen Yad LaPoishim, and he talks about Gezela, give back all the money you stole, because that's where people cling to. People make money. And Nishkin, there's a verse from the Shefach Chaim from Tzanz. He says, why is it that in Shalos HaTshuvas Svarim, you have tremendous amount of Svarim and Chaim, you have a lot of Svarim and Yeridea. You have, even in Even Ezer, there's a lot of Shalos HaTshuvas Svarim. Why is it in Choshen Mishpat you find very, very few Shalos HaTshuvas Svarim? And he gives two terutzim. He says either because everybody thought that what they were doing were right, so they never knew there was a shaila, or they knew there was a shaila and they didn't go ask her of. They just took care of themselves, and that's why you don't have a dialogue. You don't have shalos shechuvas and choshen mishpat. Ne'ilah and Yom Kippur Shulchan Aruch paskin, and the nusach is atam noisen yod lapoishim about gezela. So because it's a taivas mammon, taivas chemdas mammon, it says ma'oid tzarich lizar. Again, I think the difference is between the Tur and the Mechaber. The Mechaber in Hilchos Sheikhad says ma'oid because it's taivas v'chemdas mammon. It comes to Ribis, the Tur says ma'oid, and the Mechaber, the same Mechaber who by Sheikhad was makbet to write ma'oid, didn't write the ma'oid, and then it signed the similarity between the two, and it's all the same. It's all the same chemdas mammon. Where are there some similarities between Ribis and Sheikhad? A minute ago we spoke about L'Nochri Sashich. There's a mitzvah to take Ribis or give Ribis to a guy by halva. There's a Pischei Tshuva and Simon Tess. If I could use the term, I'm a Mishugan of Pischei Tshuva. Rabbi Shachat from Toronto loves this Pischei Tshuva. There's a discussion if you're going to court for whatever reason, you're going to Arkos if you're allowed to give sheikhad. Why? I don't know what the secular law would say. What's the shaila? The halacha of Kabbalah sheikhad, of Nesina sheikhad, does it apply in Arkos? So there's a discussion. There's Chavis Yard, there's in Pischei Tshuva, right in Simon Tess. From one hand, one of the Sheva mitzvahs from the Nayach is dinim. So it's a form of even for them. From the other hand, maybe the dinim is one thing and the Kabbalah Shaykh is something else, and there's no isser. So what is it? I don't see any. Yeah.
What includes dinim? Justice.
What are the law and order? Law and order. So you set up that it should be unjust. It's a problem. And it's funny that if you look in the Sachakov of the Pischei Tshuva, he says obviously it's not the right thing to do. It's a Chil Hashem and all other things. Maybe mitzad the Isser Kabbalah Sheikhad, it's yesh this topic. But he says if you go to, he doesn't use. I'm using Mexico as an example. But if you go to Mexico and Allah Shmirin, he says if you go to Mexico and everybody knows this guy shmirs this judge, this guy shmirs this, you're a fool if you don't shmir. You're going to lose the case. You're going to stand there like a lame dunk. It's for sure not going to be dinim properly. So he says in a case like that, he doesn't see how it would be a problem for sheikhad, even giving a sheikhad, because in the case, even though there's Sheva mitzvahs when they dinim, because the din won't be accurate anyways. Look in Pischei Tshuva.
He says if they're gonna bribe.
If the other side is going to bribe.
But umrichtig, so then you're not a bribe to bring it back to this.
Right.
But you can't. If they would be bribing richtig, you can't bribe umrichtig.
You'll never know that. In other
words, if you know that you're wrong.
He says like this: if you know that the judgment is the other side is bribing and it's going to have an effect, then you're basically losing the case if you don't get involved. So it's anyways not din. All right, so that's one thing where you could find a comparison between ribis and sheikhad. Another possible case Another possible case between ribis and shaychad is azoi. What happened? You all know, I'm sure this is the sikh of the Rebbe about the ribis. If you could be moichel ribis, when you have to give back ribis. By shaychad is the same shayla. If somebody took shaychad, when do you have to give back? Do you have to give back the shaychad? If he already took the shaychad, when does he have to give back the shaychad? So the lashon mechaber is in Siman Tes, you have to give back the shaychad kishi yitve'enu. If there was a tviyah to get, I want my shaychad money back, you have to give it back. Below tviyah, if there isn't any tviyah for the shaychad back, you don't have to give it back. And the Smeh explains why is it that way? He did something wrong. Explains the Smeh because the guy who gave, it's sort of, you have the same, the guy who gave the shaychad gave it beratzen. You have that a little in the ribis also. And on top of that, who says the psak din was wrong? The dayan took the shaychad. K'dei l'zakai says hazakai l'chayev as a chayev. So maybe it's not the wrong thing. So therefore, below tviyah, you don't have to give it back. Mashen can beribis says this. No, by ribis, you have to give back even though below tviyah. I'm sure you're learning that, so you know there's a machlekes. There's a big machlekes. There is a big machlekes by I don't know how much of the topic is in ribis, but in shaychad, the Taz argues, and Taz says, I could bring a raya from Gemara Basra, that by ribis, even below tviyah, you have to give back. By ribis, you also need tviyah to give it back. So the chilik that the Smeh makes is not necessarily correct. And Setutchach Aftishin Bang, the Ktsasa wants to back the Smeh, then the Sivas backs the Taz. And so this is another similarity or discussion between ribis and shaychad. Okay, that's not really what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the lefanel la'achra. The lefanel la'achra is, as I mentioned before, it's the halachas of ribis is smacked in between. It's a machal yakum, right after hanhagas and what you have to stay away, pas, bishul, chalav, gvina, all that, yayin esech, and then right afterwards is chukas akum. So let me tell you something about that. It seems to be, for whatever reason, the only reason I can understand why this halacha is mentioned smack in the middle, because it's a very goyish azach, the way of doing business. A yid has to be nicker, not only when he's in shul, when he's in Kerala. A yid has to be nicker in everything he does. The same thing you could say about Mekach and Memkar, what's a Chayshah Mishpat, something about the ribis fits into Chukas Ha'akum. And as I mentioned, the Lashon Aprisha is that the Hayo va'asal yodin ema b'milsa, it doesn't really fit in here, but I'm going to speak about ribis, because really, he says ribis should have been elsewhere. The Rebbe in the Agada, when we say over there, Arami Oyved Avi, Vayagasham, Malamed Shehayu Mitzuyonim Sham. What was Shibim Nefesh Yard Avi Senim Mitzrayim? Vayagasham Malamed Shehayu Yisrael Mitzuyonim Sham. Bim same art yard. What's the lashon over there? Bim same art yard Avi Senim Mitzrayim. What's the lashon? Huh? Vayagasham Bim same art? No. So, anyways, the lashon is we came down b'masei ma'at. What's the lashon? Vayhi shaim l'goy gadol atzim v'rav. So the Rebbe says Vayhi sham l'goy gadol atzim v'rav. So the Rebbe quotes, why is there no hesber on the gadol? Why is it only on the goy? And then it says Vayhi sham l'goy Malamed Shehayu Yisrael Mitzuyonim Sham. Zok the Rebbe brings from the Zevach Pesach. Malamed Shehayu Yisrael Mitzuyonim Sham. Shaloishin, so the Rebbe says Mitzuyonim. We stood out. Sham. The Al-Shech says that the pasuk is medayik. Even in Mitzrayim, we stood out. We didn't We looked like misfits even there. Says the Zevach Pesach, Shaleshinu Eshmam, Lishoinam, Dasam, Umalbushayim. That's how we were Mitsuyanim Sham, because we stood out. We didn't change our name. We all know Ve'el Shmeis B'nai Yisrael, that B'nai Yisrael, Nachsa B'nai Yisrael came out. Shmam, Lishoinam, Dasam, Umal Busheim. You'll see that those who spend a lot of time and being Medayik, the Rebbe's Haggadah, have a field day on this, because there's actually the common phrase that we say, the three things, Shmam, Levusham, L'Shainim, there's no one place, period. Even the Rebbe is mitzayin to this. That's a Faruk, the Medrash that has them close by. But to say the three things are Shmam, Levusham, L'Shainim, there's no one place that says it as is. In one place it says Levusham, another place it says Levusham, L'Shainim. And over here, the Rebbe's look at the Rebbe's lashon is Shaleshinu Ashmam, L'Shainam, Dasam, Umal Busheim. All right, put that aside. Obviously, you see this Dasam falls in there, and the Rebbe didn't quote it the way it's commonly quoted. In Shulchan Aruch, in Simen Kuf Nun Zayin, in Yeridea, there's a fascinating din, which is obviously before Ribis. I thought I brought it, of course. Oh, here it is. In Shulchan Aruch Simen Kuf Nun Zayin, it says, "As Sif Beis Aser LaAdam Loymar Shuevik Achavim." A person is never allowed to say, "I'm not Jewish. I'm a goy." Even if they're not, by saying that, he won't be killed. Avol and Kadesh Yakiru Shehu Yehudi. If, however, for him not to be noticed as a Yid, Mishanim al Bushay, he changes his dress code. If it's B'shas Hagzeira, it's mutter. Why? Kivan she'enei oimer shu'evik achavim. To utter those words out of your mouth, I'm not Jewish, I'm a ovik achavim, that you're not allowed to. But if you're not uttering those words, if you're trying to mingle with the crowd, shelo yahargu, b'shas hagzeira, that you're allowed to. The Darkei Tshuva brings from whoever, he says even a bigger chiddush. He brings from Sefer Chassidim. The Yisrael sheshemeya she'omrim olav shehu goy. If you're on the bus and you're in the train and you hear people talking and people make reference about you that you're a guy. In my place, someone will say I'm Amish. Yeah? You have to turn around and tell him you're making a mistake. Not only you're not allowed to say I'm a guy. Even if somebody's mistaking you as a guy, you have to turn around and say Yehudi Anochi. Avol b'sefer Be'ersheva kasav b'shem Marshal Yisraelim v'Yehudim sheholchu b'terech b'shas hagzeira. If a Yid and a Goy were walking together b'shas hagzeira, upavu b'hem pritzim v'chakru oisem. You can just imagine in Russia. V'chakru oisem eirachik. They asked, Im yesh b'neim Yehudim v'shasat Yehudi. And the Yid didn't. They asked, anybody Jewish here? And the Yid is quiet. V'kivan b'libay, and he had intention. In Yishalu Oiser, if they would ask him personally, Yoimad Emes Shehu Yehudi. Aval Achshav She'ein Sheilim Oiser, Malay Lahaydis. Why should I just pour it out? Vayishmaelim Kachshu Va'amru Ein Kan Yehudi Beinenu. And the Goyim stuck up for the Yid, and they said, no, there's nobody Jewish here. The Yehudi Shasak Lehem, and the Yid hearing this was quiet. V'loy amalo shu sheker, ba'asher hu Yehudi. He didn't respond, say no, they lied. I'm Jewish. V'ata mischaber ta Yehudi v'liboy noikvay al mashachata b'zeh. And he asked this question to the Marshal. I feel bad. Maybe according to this halacha, I should have said no, I'm Jewish. V'heishiv shlei chata Yehudi. And I think it was the Marshal said, you didn't do anything wrong. But because you feel bad that somebody mistook you for not even somebody mistook you. You feel bad that you didn't shray ich bin a yid, ich bin a chassid, yisa'ane beis v'beis. He should make a tainus bahab. So the Shulchan Aruch says, what do we have here? We have that a yid has to make sure never to say I'm not Jewish. That's usher. And b'shas hagzeira, it's even b'shas hagzeira. B'shas hagzeira means where they're killing yidden. We'll soon see. B'mashana malbushay, you're allowed to, because you're not doing b'shas hagzeira. B'shas hagzeira, shaloi b'shas hagzeira. The Ramah says, listen to this Ramah. V'chol zeh lo shari rak b'makim sakana. Even to swap your clothing, that's only allowed b'makim sakana. Avol shaloi b'makim sakana. If it's not dangerous to look like me and you, the only reason he's dressing, why he's dressing, listen to this, it's already a problem that happened back then. Like this, he'll be able to skip the tax. He'll be cheaper taxes. Somehow, a Jew, they charge extra. He's dressing with his jeans and everything. So v'yaver meches, it's a hefsid meruba. He's losing money. Kadayim olazeh asur, to change your clothing just to save money. If it's even to say that you're a goy, Rahman al-Litzan, even b'shas sakana you're not allowed to. To be meshana l'bushay b'shas sakana you're allowed to. But if it's only a money thing, money. If it's only a money thing, you cannot be meshana malbushay. It's usher, plain in the Shulchan Aruch. Yeah. All right. So this is the siman. That's a couple of simanim before Ribbis. We have maybe I have a sandwiched in after Ribbis is the halachas of chukas ha'akum. So I need a. You're there, siman kuf ayin chas. Hilchas, you don't have it in? No, you don't have it. You're there, chelik great. Oh, right after, you have it here in this one? It's after Ribbis. Yeah, thank you. So in Yeridei siman kuf ayin ches, right after Ribbis, ein holchim b'chukei sagoyim. We all know the halacha of v'chukeseim leisei lechu. You're not allowed to follow the goyish ways. So there's many parts to it. There's the part of the payas, there's the part of the chup, there's according to some to be megadol mesapek koimi, megadol bluris, according to the Bachas Yisud Deraisa, v'chukeseim leisei lechu, all these things. But then he said the simple chukas hagoy. What's the first thing he says? Ein holchim b'chukas hagoyim v'lo yilbash malbish hamayuchad lahem. Don't wear any garments that is miyuchad lahem. So the shaila is, in what case? First of all, when you learn these halachas, you have to know there's 3 or 4 different Isurei Torah that intertwine, and you have to categorize them. There is the Isser of Uvchakeseim Leisei Lechu. There's the Isser of Tznius, the classical one. I'll tell you a story. Many years ago, a student of mine called me. He said they put up an ad on one of the sites, a Jewish dating ad. I don't know what it was. And one of the rigid rabbanim called them and says, it's pasnish. The picture that you put for the flyer or on the ad was a boy and a girl dating, okay, which is fine. There was a drawing, but whoever drew the picture made the girl wearing a red skirt. So a red skirt or orange, whatever it was. So one of the kanoim really laced it out on this organization. He was telling me didn't like the organization before also. And so this guy was my student. So he called me, what should I do? So I tell him, listen, if you want me to find you a heter about the red skirt, maybe today's days is heterim. Aber es passt sicher nicht. Because Lamashta, when the Shulchan Aruch, I'll soon speak about the red, the Shulchan Aruch speaks about red here. It talks about chukas akum. And chukas akum applies to men and women equal. When the Shulchan Aruch, when people speak about red for women, it's a question of tznius. There's a lot of, it's a rah color. And even in red, there are many shades of red. There's red, there's pink, and there's orange and all that. So there's okay. You want to promote yourself as a Chassidish program, you have to do what's a Chassidish program. And that was the point. Anyways, so I want you to know that when you talk about these halachas, you have to categorize. Tznius, the Alter Rebbe says in Hashkamas HaBoker, not wearing a yarmulke might be of a chugasayim leiselechu. Not wearing a yarmulke might be because the goyim, they go into a courtroom, they take things off. So if a goyim they go uncovered, not wearing a yarmulke is not only not tznius, it might be of a chugasayim leiselechu. So you have to categorize if a chugasayim leiselechu. Then there could be a shayla of tznius. Then it could be a shayla of lo yilbash. Then there could be a shayla of, if a chugasayim leiselechu to machlekes rishonim, is it connected to what could lead to avodah zarah dafka, or even things that are chukah that's not avodah zarah. So each thing even though you might have cleared one base, you still have another problem that you might deal with. So I want to give you a couple of digmos. Ein hochem bechukas goyim, v'lo yelbash malbush hamayuchel. So if you learn this halacha, if it's designated, if they have a specific garment, that's the one you shouldn't wear. Then he goes on to the other things, the payas and the buildings, v'chulu v'chulu. Comes the Ramah, Ela yehei muvdo bahem b'malbushav. A yid has to be a misfit. A yid has to be different in the way he dress. Uvishar ma'asav. So, excuse me, what did you just say? A minute ago, you said, malbush hamayuchad lahem. And now you're saying that I have to be muvdo bahem b'malbushav. And if you look at a step earlier, the Ramah decided to add the words onto the Mechaber, which is the words of the Rambam, and instead of just reading Ein Holchem Bechukas Hagoyim, V'lo Yilbash Malbash Hamayuchel Lahem, the Ramah inserts V'loi Medamim Lahem. Don't try to fit in. V'loi Medamim Lahem. So let's say if a person wants to fit in other words, a practice shaila is, do we have to wear a white shirt, a black kapata, and look different? Should we not fit in, or is the isser just on the chukas akum, just on malbush hamayuchad lehem? So the Ramah goes on to say, "V'chol zeh einei asur ele bedavar shenagu agayim l'shum pritzis." The Ramah keeps on flip-flopping. It looks like he's flip-flopping from side to side. Loi medamim lehem, the Mechaber skipped, and he decided to insert it. In no way. A yid has to stand out. And from the other hand, chol zeh asur ele bedavar shenagu agayim l'shem pritzis. If a guy behaves a certain way or wears certain things because of pritzus, kagoin. This is the thing where everybody hooks onto certain people. Shanagu lilboish malbushim adomim. The goyim wear the sarim. This is not women. This is bechlau. The goyim wear red clothing, rara, and they want to show off. A yid should not wear that because it's pritzus. It's pritzus. Remember, pritzus is not the Tosfos in Avodah Zarah. Tosfos in Avodah Zarah says the v'chukosayim loiselechu applies in two types of chukas. It fits in very much with what the Ramah is going to say. There's a chukah that's Avodah Zarah. There's a lot of things they do because Avodah Zarah. You know. Now we're at the end of the year season. I don't know. I'm based on Grace and Maven and these things. I'm a little Torah boy, but there are certain people who are against wearing the shmatas by graduation. They put on the hats, and there's a special name for this, right? The hats and the zirkons, I think, are against their kids wearing these things. I think is because it could be either it's a goyish minig or it's I don't know. It could be it stems from Avodah Zarah. I don't know where the shmatas come from. There are so many halachas. even, Rabbi Shachar put together, Shuchar, I shouldn't say Shachar. He put together the Rebbe's letters. If you look at the Rebbe's letters, there are so many things that people don't realize that the Rebbe associates. It's a problem of Chukaseim Loisalechu. Making a chasna on Sunday, the Rebbe says, you can't just try to do it on Sunday because Sunday is a shayla of Chukaseim. I think the Rebbe even uses the word. It could be it's a Chukaseim Loisalechu. Making a chasna. We Baruch Hashem have to do it because Baruch Hashem there's a lot of chasnas and we need to fill up all the dates. And yeah, but to intentionally do it on Sunday, there's a letter from the Rebbe somewhere. It's a problem. If you look in the Achrayim Shaylas Teshuvah, you found the marker for this. You look at the Shaylas Teshuvah Achrayim. There are so many discussions about if you're allowed to make a birthday cake with candles. What is this? What's this birthday cake with candles? Lately, I saw that there's a tshuva written about Yom HaZikaron in Israel to make a moment of silence. The people stop and stand up and listen. There's a movement. It's a goyish thing. I don't know why I don't remember anybody coming out against when the Rebbe wanted a moment of silence. But the Tosfos says there are two types of things that fall under the category of a chukasein loisalechu. Number one, something which is avodah zarah, something which stems from avodah zarah. Number two, something that they do and nobody has any clue why they're doing it. A chayk, malashon chayk. If they don't even know why they're doing it, that's a chayk. If it's shmekt avodah zarah. If it's shmekt avodah zarah, then you're not allowed to. So those are the two things that the Sayim Eloi Seilechu is chal. Tosfos says this. Anyways, listen to this. Chol zeh einei asur ela b'davar shenago b'oigoyim l'shem pritzus. Like the red. You look in the Achrayim, some say it doesn't apply today because everybody wears red. But that's for men. Women might be tznius issues. Red is not orange. Red is, and some say black is a problem. To go Rahman al-Atzlan to a levaya, go ask. Don't say alligator. The guy go to levayas, they all wear black. Are you allowed to wear black to levaya? Is it a goyish custom? So it could be this switched. If they did it l'shum pritzis, v'hu malbush sarim, that's not allowed to. Oy b'davar shanagu l'minagu l'chayk. V'ein tam b'davar, that falls under the category of darkei amoidi. Avol davar shanagu l'tayeles kegoin shadarkam shakol mishu reifei mumcha. Every doctor wears the white cloth, the white whatever, the white. A doctor that wears the l'tayeles to show that this is his profession. Shanikar by shu reifei uman mutar l'lavshay. V'chein sha'osim mishum kaved. I once had a discussion with Rabbi Shachar. Again, it's not like I call him every day. And Rabbi Shachar said, what's the נחman? You're able to say Yadin Tog. I said, what are you talking about? He says, you wear a tie. It's typical, right? Not my Shver, my David Shachar. You wear a tie. He forgot that he also wears a tie. But so he says, what are you wearing? He says, what are you wearing a tie? Because the guy wears a tie. I saw a story. In one of these tshuras that just epitomizes what the Rebbe's view would be of this. There's a story that Reb Shmuel Chafer was once by Yechidus by the Rebbe. And Reb Shmuel Chafer is the Menal from Beis Rivka. So the Rebbe is talking to him and saying about the problems of tznius in Heintige Zeiten. And the Rebbe says, Heintige Zeiten, the style is mini skirts, everything is mini. So Rabbi Shmuel Chafer says, you want me to go back there to Yisrael and fight it? So the Rebbe says, no. Ich gehört, only the Rebbe can say this. Ich gehört, as in Frankreich, in France, the person is changing the style. Now it's going to become all long. So, aber oi va'avoy, says the Rebbe, something along that line. Oy va'avoy, that unzer meidlach are going to switch the style. They're going to wait for the guy in France to decide what's right and what's wrong. That, if the person wears it because the person in France, that's a chukas hagoy. That is fitting in, being trying to fit in. We have to be a bunch of misfits. We have to stand out. Now, the Maharik was the one that established this rule, because the words "v'lo ein medamim lehem," and it's not only specifically by these particular items, is the shit of the Maharik. Many others held that no, not only there's a shaila ein medamim lehem. How about if you're doing it for other reasons? You're doing it because you put on clothing, obviously, because you're not interested. You like this clothing. You like the feel of jeans. It's not because you want to fit in. So there's a machlekes achronim is if you did a shaloi b'miskaven histamis lehem if you're over. But the Maharik bases on the Gemara in Chulin, Gemara in Brachos. The Gemara in Brachos says the famous statement that Mayim Rishonim Hachilu Chazer. There's actually a beautiful diak in the Marsha there. That originally it says the words Basar Nevela, and then it switches to Chazer, and he makes a lamdisha halachic answer. How was the Yid? The story over there is the Yid was selling. He had a butcher store, and he had kosher flesh, and on the side he also had non-kosher flesh. And how did he know? So he says, if anybody, it was a restaurant. Anybody walks in and he sees him washing his hands in the Tilas Yadayim, he gave him a shchita mahadrim and a mahadrim. But if he didn't see him washing his hands, he must be Billy. Billy he could give him the nevela. So originally Gemara uses the term nevela, and then it switches to chazer. The question is, you're not allowed to make business on chazer anyways. It's utter to, even though it's not esaban no, but you're not allowed to do business. So it's tutz chatish in the bank. But the story is, says the Maharik, excuse me, he had to wait to see if he's washing his hands. He's a Yid or guy. I thought ein medamim lehem. I thought a Yid has to look like that gentleman in the back, but the line of payas, and a Yid has to stand out. I know him, okay? He has to stand out with a kapati. He has to look like a Yid. The second somebody walks in and he's wearing overalls, can Hashem give him basar chazer? From there, the Maharik proves no. There's a lot of wiggle room. As long you might be wearing jeans because it's comfortable. As long as you don't wear malbush sarim, malbush pritzus, malbush chak. So this is the Maharik. So the Shach says, because this Gemara is the Gemara about Mayim Rishon Chilu B'sar Chazer is a medrash. And when you look in the medrash, the medrash adds two words that changes the whole thing. I forgot to tell you this. But I quoted before about Kufnim Zayin, that you're not allowed to say you're a Yid, you're not allowed to say you're a goy. This is the Lashon of the Be'er Heitev. It's actually the Shach, but I don't have it. The Lashon of the Be'er Heitev is like this. The Mechaber says, B'shas HaGzeira, even B'shas HaGzeira, they're killing Yidden. You're not allowed to say you're ein a Yehudi. Says the Be'er Heitev, Kasav Ashach, Hainu Shagazru. The Gzeira was Sheyahare Kol HaNikra B'Shem Yehudi. They're going to kill every Jew. You're not allowed to say you're not Jewish. They're killing every Jew. There's a Meshuggah Avart from the Kloisenberger Rebbe. The Kloisenberger Rebbe says, Hashem Yisper B'Ksei Vamim. We all know the story from the Rebbe. The Rebbe used to say Happy New Year's on New Year's Day because the Barditcheva said Hashem Yisper B'Ksei Vamim. But there's a vart from the Kloisenberger Rebbe that's equally beautiful. He says Nebuch, he lived through the war and he lost his wife and 11 children. He says Yamach Shemar the Nazis. You think when they were shooting, they asked you, are you a chassid? Are you a misnagid? Are you reform? Are you conservative? He says, whoever looked like a Jew, they killed. Hashem, the Eibishter looks at a Jew, b'ksoiv amim. Lahavdil had the Nazis look at a Jew. Whoever is Jewish, whoever has a Yiddish neshama, whoever looks like has the Jewish nose, that's how the Eibishter relates to every year. So anyway, so listen to this. So if Shas Hagzera, they're killing everybody who's b'shem Yehudi. You're not allowed to say I'm a Yehudi. Avol im gazru al shmad al kol mi shelo yilbash malbush abigechavim Shmad is Yehorig Val Yaver. Shmad is Yehorig Val Yaver. Because over there he says, and even b'shmad, afilu b'shash shmad, ain't usher elokashayiv the chavim makir in oisoi. They're dying in lekufay la'aver, and they're pushing him to Achman al to convert. Avo lil b'shbelga the usher kayiv chavim, that is allowed. So b'shash shmad, it's Yehorig Val Yaver. There's two chuvas from the Tzemach Tzedek. Yeridei Siman Tzadik and Yeridei Siman Tzadik Aleph. You know, they used to say there's a lot of times when you learn Tanya, you learn different svarim, and you're missing some nekuda. What's the tamtzis of this? Sometimes you could look at the mafteach and yonim, especially if it's not done from people like me and you. If it's done from tzaddikim, then you could see the mafteach says that this retzach harum here, this is the nekuda. Kabbalah soil is the nekuda, or simcha is the nekuda. There's two chuvas in Tzemach Tzedek Yeridei, Siman Tzadik Aleph. I think the Mafteach on the Tzemach Tzedek the Rebbe wrote. And when I don't know. Whoever wrote, I think the Rebbe wrote this. Because I looked in the Mavoi, it looks like the Rebbe writes, I wrote this. Okay, it says Siman Tzadik Aleph, whereas it's not exactly what the Mafteach in Yonim says. The Rebbe says the Gimel, the discussion in Siman Tzadik and Siman Tzadik Aleph is the three in Yonim of Levushim, Shmam, and Lashonim, if it's Shayach Yehorig Val Yaver. That's being discussed in those Simanim. And you have to dig deep to see if that's what it's really all about. Anyway, so the Shach comes along and Shach says, how could you bring a Raya? How could you bring a Raya from that Gemara? The Medrash says it was Shasa Shmad. And b'Shasa Shmad, you're not allowed to wear different clothing. Because of Shasa Shmad, you're Yehorig Val Yaver, even to wear other clothing. So this is a debate. And the point seems to be from the Shulchan Aruch that we are much more mekel. That's how we pass them. But mitzad the background, obviously, to wear goyish clothing, liz damis lahem, or wear goyish clothing that are choik avodah zara, for sure, also. The question is, does a yid really have to stand out? Does he have to wear Yiddish clothing, or could he wear clothing that a goy wears? So, from the Shulchan Aruch, it's mashmeh. If it's l'te'eles, if you like it better, it's fine. But there are others who are machmir. Obviously, you know the Chassidish Levush is no. We have to stand up. They say a story that a Moscow once came over to one of the Ershta Belzer Rebbes. He says, "You're wearing a shtreimel. You think Avraham Avinu wore a shtreimel? It's a new thing. It's a new mother." So he says, "I don't know what Avraham Avinu wore, but one thing I could tell you that he must have looked around and see what the goyim wore, and whatever they wore, he did not wear. So I don't know if Yudafka wore a shtreimel, but." We have to look different. There's a order from the Rebbe that I think will really enhance this. You know, we all know the very famous sikha from the Rebbe about Neiman Nischayvu Seneim Shel Yisrael Kliya Nachman al by the time of Purim, and the Gemara says they should stach v'lotzelem. They didn't nanu misudasha, and the Rebbe goes through the whole thing. It says, halachically, there's no einish misa for these things. And the Rebbe establishes a beautiful svara. And the Rebbe says, the Medrash says, that every Yid, Chazal tell us, B'nai Yisrael nimshulu l'kivsa achas ha'imedus ben shivim ze'evim. The Yidden are compared like a shepsela, and there's 70 hungry wolves ready for lunch. We're a shepsela. 70 wolves ready for lunch, and a shepsela has 0 chance of survival. A Yid, al pidere chateva, has 0 chance of survival. Uvechein, the Eibishter keeps us safe. So the Rebbe is a mechadish over, you're right. Nanu misudasi sherish is not chiyuv misa, and even for the Yidden who weren't mishtachel l'tzelem is not chiyuv misa, only those few. But says the Rebbe, if you remove your connection to the Eibishter, You're just a shepsela. You're an innocent shepsela. An innocent shepsela will be a good lunch for the Zayvim. To connect to the supernatural shmira to protect you against the Zayvim, you gotta do above and beyond the regular stuff. And that's why Nanu Misudase Me'esha Russia, that was the problem that Rahman al-Islam could have led to Kliya. So listen to our order from the Rebbe. We all know that Avodah Zarah is Yeharig Val Yaver. But Nanu Misudase Me'esha Russia, it's not you. They felt good hanging out with Achashverosh. That was enough to make them fit in. Make them fit in? Good. Says the Rebbe. This is a Purim Dikasicha Ara 28. Al pi amavura bifnim, based on the short hezbollah I just said, muturetze shailas hamafarshim. The mafarshim shaila get answered. Madua hashayla v'chimasi panim yesh b'davar hirak b'negel atam de'ishtachvu l'tzelem v'loy lehatam de'nenu mesudasi sharei sharashachul. Listen to the answer. Ki chiyuv kliya. I'm reading the wrong Hara 48. Al pizeh yumta kakesha ben shnei atamim. This is the connection between the two tamim. Either the onenu mesudasi sharei sharasha or shtachvu l'tzelem. They're both the same. You hear this? Hishtachvu l'tzelem, pure avodah zarah, and nenu mesudasi sharei sharasha is the same. Why? Ki gam ha denenu mesudasoi, for a year to have hana from Sudas Achashverosh, hu inyan shel avodah zarah b'dakus. That is avodah zarah. The fact, you're learning ribis. The big thing about going to court is because by going to court, you're acknowledging, they're good. Their system is lahavdil as good as our system. It's a chil Hashem, right? So over here, Nenu misudase shoresh Russia who inyan shel avodah zarah b'dakus. Ki yadua abir b'mayim Razal Yisrael shebechutz la'aretz avdei avodah zarah b'ta'arahim. So the Rebbe basically is saying to try to fit in is not only to try to fit in, or I'm using the word to try to fit in. Sometimes just by fitting in, you're removing the fact that you're standing out. And it looks like we have to stand out and not run our life the way Lahavdil Goyim run. So I found the Chassam Sofer for this. Sometimes when you're bored and you read Sfarim, I was in a Shavur somewhere, I say this, it's mamish the words of the Rebbe. The Chassam Sofer says as our word. The pasuk says, "Va'avdol eschem and ha'amim liyos li." I chose you. I took you away from the other people to be for me. Zok Rashi, this is a pasuk in Parashas Kedoshim. Zok Rashi, the imlav. If you are not avdol min ha'amim, harei atem l'nevuchanetzav v'chaveirav. Either you're avdil and you're with me, avdil. You have to stand out and you're with me, or you're with Nebuchadnezzar. Pirish says the Chassam Sofer, Afilu Yisrael oisim b'tzeinin shamakim. The Yidden are doing tefillin, the Yidden are doing everything. The Yidden are sitting in koilo. Oisim b'tzeinin shamakim. Rak eino mitzuyanim liyesh nivdalim v'nikarim bein ha'amim. They don't look different than everybody else. They're doing everything correct, but they're not nivdal v'avdol eschem. Ha'olam nidan basaruba. He says Chassam Sofer, the world goes basaruba. We all know the story that the person came over to the Medrash says, or somebody I think came over to Rabbi Yeshua and says, you don't keep your own Torah. And your Torah says you go basaruba. Roiv of the world doesn't believe in the Eibishter. And what's the famous answer which he's giving? Roiv is only a bearer when there is a suffix. When you're zavadai, you don't need Roiv. The Chassam Sofer says something else here. He says over here, for the Eibishter to protect us, for Avdul, you have to be nicker. When the item is nicker, I'm not nifla b'raiv. But if you're not nicker, then you pack a balu b'raiv. And the raiv of the people are not Jewish, are goyim, are Nebuchadnezzar v'chaveirav. For you to be able to stand out, You have to be nicker. And if you those who are learning smicha, he goes through 3 phenomenal points. He says like this: Vestem is sagen that you are in nicker. Vestem is sagen that I'm a Jewish and I'm not nicker, so still let me go through. So he quotes the Haftarah. The Eibishter did that by B'nai Kushim. It also says that the Eibishter took them from out of a nation and saved them. There are other Goyish nations that the Eibishter saved. Vestim is zager you're a davar chashuv, and a davar chashuv doesn't become batul. What kind of davar chashuv? My chashuv we say him the Yisrael I einam nivdalim me'umasaylam. The Eibishter took us out. The Eibishter took out other nations. A yid is a barrier, and a barrier is ain't a betela. He goes through system by system. So he says, excuse me, for something to be considered a barrier and not be batul, it has to be all together as one. We're not together as one. We have Yidden Baruch Hashem in Australia. We have Yidden in Eretz Yisrael. We have Yidden in France. And anything in Yichalek Olav, the Shulchan Aruch says there's no din of barrier. The only way we're able to survive and win and be connected to the Eibishter is if we are nikar, if we are nivdal. If you don't make yourself stand out, if you don't make yourself like a misfit, it's a kevasech Nachman al ben shivim b'skeinim. All right, so I want to finish off with the one last thing from the Rebbe. One last thing from the Rebbe. It was Parshas Balak. And here's another thing I found. I'll read you a Darkei Tshuva and tell me if you know anything the Rebbe Pasha said. Exact same thing. And Chukas Ha'akum, the end of one of the Darkei Tshuvas, he says like this. Oh, it's a terrible isser, terrible isser, terrible isser. So he says, he brings from somebody, and he says, Asher b'vaynesenu harabim chadashim mikarev bo kama talmidei chachamim v'anshe Hashem. They are very nice people, very learned people. Asher b'veisam b'eiram, when they're in home, when they're in Brooklyn, hoilchim alubish b'ksheris. They dress like a kapota, they dress a white shirt. All right. Ubeheter. Uviyumei akayitz. When it comes summer, we're entering summer. Shanoisim l'mokem ma'yonis harchatza asher artzis harchaykas hey mislapshim b'mamushe nachrim. Oh, I'm on vacation. So I'm on vacation. You wear your Goyish clothing. He says that's Hashem Yisbarach Yirachem Apleitas Am Yisrael. Sounds like a real Hungarian lash out, yeah. Oh, how could the summer? You have to know Yiddishkeit only in the winter, not in the summer. Let me read you a order from the Rebbe in Parshas Balak. Chelik, what is this? Chelik Yud Gimel, and this order from the Rebbe is in bold letters. Ha'ara 34. Kan hamokim lahadgish ba'enyin shazman grama. Oisam hamekilim bekama in yonit snias bekayitz ubefrat kishenim tsoyim bediras arai mechutz lahir umehem ha'imrim echta va'ashuv kasher asuv va'ira. I'll go back to the city. I'll start looking like a from a yid again. V'noigeya lahan hogas anashim gamkein ubefrat lenashim. Share kama v'kama mehem nikras akeres abayis v'yesh laharich v'ein kama kaimer. So it's there's a very thin line between, a very, very, very thin line. They overlap each other. You're looking for a Torah, Miro. All right, cool.
Thank you very much.
Yeah?